now we have an opportunity to listen to our guest speaker, Mr. Mohale. And as he comes up, I just want to say a few words about Mr. Mohale, who's our chairman. He is currently the CEO. He studied medicine. He has had a distinguished career at the helm and in leadership roles of several major South African and multinational companies. And he has had an opportunity to serve in various international boards as well. Mr. Mohale has an impressive track record of building successful companies, delivering results, and making significant advances in transformation in these companies. He has also been very vocal and very courageous and an active proponent of transformation since the 1980s. And he has played a leadership role in the Black Management Forum for over 33 years. And he brings that experience not only into the Symphonia organization, but in this room as well. And we're going to hear about that. He's been awarded various awards in honor of his contribution, not only in the business space, but in the transformation of lives. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Mr. Bonang Mohale. Thank you, sir.
So does it mean I'm stuck here? I can't move? Like so. Eminence, excellencies, distinguished partners. It's very humbling to speak after these amazing, good quality human beings. Will it work if I do that? So Dr. Louise is an amazing human being, selfless. Whenever you are in her presence, you feel that this is somebody that has been touched by angels in the presence of dignified greatness. From the pool of African excellence. So why don't you put our hands together for this amazing woman? Seven selfless, glorious years dedicated to serving others. We chose leadership because leadership matters. Leadership in education, because when one steadily burns the midnight oil, one gains access to the domain of knowledge and wisdom, the world that has no frontiers, the world that cannot be conquered without a persistent crusade. When you have gone to school, you are able to be enterprising, not just an entrepreneur. To be able to make a plan irrespective of an environment where you find yourself, you will be able to survive because you learn this notion of resilience. And resilience in Africa is much more than just food, energy, water nexus. This is God's own country, and we are God's very own people. There is no way that He can put us at the tip, southernmost tip of the continent, to leave us without any form of guidance or worship. He has a plan for us. Leadership, because when you posit leadership in the center of everything that we do, you then have an opportunity to produce extraordinary outcomes. And tonight, we have seen, we have touched, we have hugged, we have smelled this extraordinary outcome. But by ordinary human beings that were led to believe, and they've internalized that they are leaders. My grandmother, who brought me up, used to say, anybody that feels called upon to lead is a leader. So it has nothing to do with a C-suite, a title on your business card. It only has to do with a feeling. Because when we do put it center stage, we are then able to start first with the who and then the what. Because people are our most valuable asset. Because a company, a school, an institution that is inappropriately located can always move its headquarters. One that is short of cash can always leverage its position and borrow from the bank. But a company that is poor on people is a dead company indeed. So when we value the contribution, the collective thought processes of our people, and we harness that to good use, not even the sky is the limit. We are then able to appreciate this notion of structure follows strategy because we like to see how we are organized, tessellate like a jigsaw puzzle within a broader scheme of things. Who's going to be chief? Who's going to be Indian with honor and glory? To appreciate the systems and processes that we put in these institutions that allows us to do stuff. But there is nothing much more important in our role as leaders than the culture that we imbue an organization. And we have a choice whether that culture will be the one that says you will because I say so. Or the one that says, I know I've got positional power and I'm going to use it judiciously. Power is arrogant, is self-centered and egocentric. It has a big ego. It's like a speedboat. When you turn the throttle, the V8 roars. Your body gets pushed against the back of the seat. The nose faces upwards. You feel like you cannot be touched. But by definition, power has a 32-kilometer radius. So if you drive your powerboat too far into the ocean, you'll come back pushing it. When you harness the force, the impetus of people, it's like having a sailboat. It is quiet, it's unassuming. But when you turn that sail to harvest nature, you can circumnavigate the world not once, but as many times as you want. So we have a choice as leaders as to what type of culture we live in these organizations. Biblically speaking, this is the parable of the 4 seeds. That there was this one that fell by the root and got eaten by the bird. That fell by the rocks, never really developed roots, therefore no traction. But there was this lucky seed that fell in fertile soil and it grew and bore fruit in abundance. The farmer does not spend 80% of his or her time massaging the individual seeds. But the farmer spends 80% of his or her time preparing the soil, tilling the soil, to make it easy possible for any of the seeds, irrespective of color, shape, or creed, that it has exactly the same chance to grow and bear fruit in abundance. That's our job as leaders, to create that environment. This notion that the 3 Harvard University professors 7 years ago, when we went to Davos at the World Economic Forum, they called the smell of the place. That it is possible when you walk into the classroom, the reception of a school, the reception of a company, to smell as to whether here they rule by fear. Like the smell of Calcutta at 45 degrees on a shade, or the beautiful fragrance of Fontainebleau. That is an individual choice that every single solitary one of us has when you exercise your authority, power, or energy. When we get this right, maybe, just maybe, we liberate potential like we see with these youngsters. Maybe, just maybe, we are then able to appreciate technology, to thrust ourselves fast forward into the 21st century. Like we did with Kenya's M-Pesa, we didn't have to dig cables, but understood that creativity is thinking new things, innovation is doing new things, and finding a solution to today's problem. Not just to talk about the 4th industrial revolution, of the Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, robotics, cryptocurrencies. But can I find a solution for the ladies in the dusty hills of Mondlo, Nkandla, Ngutu, for them to go to the river every day and come back carrying the water on their heads, to be molested by unscrupulous men in an environment, in a context where our women are feeling unsafe and femicide is at its highest. Maybe, just maybe, we might develop this muscle called agility, not only because it rhymes with stability, because that's what we use to get ourselves out of difficult conditions and circumstances. And then lastly, maybe, just maybe, all of us can be seized with the task of developing leaders of the 21st century. Because I lead today in this country, in this context, when so many of us dare to hope that joy and peace will prevail, very differently from the way I was managed. Therefore, the skills that we need for tomorrow, we are told 46% of them don't even exist. But can we give them the abilities and capabilities to be able to survive in that environment and feel home, like you give your 4-year-old an iPad and they find comfort and they find their way through it? So that we can demonstrate the 4 baseline behaviors of the 21st century to facilitate team collaboration much more effectively. Because today's internationally competitive environment is not looking for individual superstars, but how we fit in teams. Secondly, to demonstrate our obsession with people, to develop close, personal, intimate relationships with other human beings, not with things. Thirdly, to be able to champion the desired change. Because if you're not changing, by definition, you're accepting that you're going backwards. It's only when the pain of staying the same is bigger than the pain of change that your people will find it in the goodness of their heart to accept that on a composite basis, tomorrow has to be substantially better than today. And then lastly, to provide critical perspectives. Not to be a yabas, but to say, can I help my people to see around the corners? To always ask the question, so what else is missing? To be able to think, to be curious, to reflect, not to apportion, to say, what is it that I personally can do to change my own personal circumstances? Let me end by saying, especially today when we are in a spot of bother, as Kholisa Nelson Mandela's children, from a pariah nation to the most admired nation in the world, only in 23 years, to ask the question, how did we get it so horribly wrong in such a short period of time? We thought we were different, we're not going to be another failed African country. But the facts don't lie. So we burn about 80 billion rands a year, every year, in irregular, fruitless, and wasteful expenditure. I didn't say so, the Auditor General said it. And our president siphons off in the order of 100 billion a year for the last 10 years in state capture to Dubai and other foreign countries. Because we know now in hindsight that he's not acting in the best national interest. That he does not have the best interest of South Africa Inc. Does not have the best interest of this economy. No, does not have the best interest of Africa's children. Otherwise, how do you explain the fact that we spend 10 times more on education and health than all African countries? And yet our outcomes in health, in terms of morbidity and mortality and infant mortality, in terms of education, literacy and numeracy, worse than Zambia, Zimbabwe, Malawi, Botswana, and Namibia that spends a tenth of what we spend. Because our focus, our energy is on other things, not on improving the quality of lives of the majority of our people. Where 10.4 million people are not in education, employment, and training. Where more than 35 million of the 55 million people live below the poverty datum line.